Good. Wow.
How'd you get here?
When you exist in the 1880s, 1870s to 1890s, and you have a sibling on another continent as a thing, you don't see them. You don't have a close relationship when someone lives, whatever the boat ride is, no planes, 1890, not a thing, between fucking Germany and Paraguay. Wild. All right, Morty says, postmodernism is defined as suspicion towards meta-narratives. Nietzsche with Freud and Marx is known as the fathers of hermeneutics of suspicion. It can be described as that. And it comes from that and stems from that. I think there's a more problematic way if we start talking about the hermeneutics of suspicion, because I think the word suspicion could be easily flipped with what it is, which is critique. Because the ability to find autocritique or to discover and work within critique is the same as suspicion in a lot of the ways that's described. It becomes challenging to have that conversation. In the hermeneutics of suspicion, you don't focus on the truth. You tell the story about the asserter's bad motives. I do think that's a little bit oversimplifying as well. Nietzsche would not have us look at someone's bad motives. He wouldn't go, well, that's not what you really want. That's why you're lying. He'd say, look, the world you live in, the place you live in, how you live, where you exist, and all of this creates a unique type of mentality. And that mentality puts you in a very problematic place overall. This fucking kid. This is fucking a lot.
To Germany to take care of her brother, who by that point had gone insane.
There's a wonderful movie, by the way, by Bela Tarr called The Turin Horse, about the horse that made Nietzsche crack. Phenomenal film. Very slow.
Elizabeth lived for another 3 decades managing the Nietzsche archive. He was a big fan of Mussolini and also of Hitler. Hitler's really like tying this whole board together. All roads just lead directly to Hitler. It's like a History Channel documentary. Whilst Elizabeth was managing the Nietzsche archive and doing all that editing and publishing, she may have engaged in some light forgery and also prevented the publication of certain materials. So that's where this idea comes from that, oh, actually she was behind all the anti-Semitic stuff. However, the material that Elizabeth forged was more personal than political.
See, this is like literally when you start with a theory and you start working backwards from it, this is how you get to that point. To say that a woman who moved to Paraguay to create an Aryan nation did something more personal than political in her fucking life is a goddamn leap.
Basically, she tried to make it seem like she and her brother were closer towards the end of his career than they really were, and that's about it. At least according to American scholar Robert Hulb and his book Nietzsche's Jewish Problem. So the anti-Semitic stuff, that wasn't invented by somebody else. That's all original. Nietzsche.
Yeah, it's not though. Like this is insane. It's so insane. This is so over the top, it's unbelievable.
Did believe that Jews were racially inferior.
He did not.
They were an immoral and corrupting influence on society.
No.
And he saw the Jewish question, i.e., what are we going to do with all these Jews, as a legit political issue.
So did Marx, because it was a legit political issue because people were doing things about it. If you hadn't noticed, about 40, 50 years later, people did shit about it. And it kind of was a big deal.
He wavered a bit on his preferred answer to that, but I mean, there's not really a good answer there, is there?
Yes, there is. Just amazing.
It's giving Hitler?
Identitarians, people who live for their identity and require it, This is the line of thought.
1933, the Nazis get elected. Elizabeth probably voted Hitler, though there's no way of knowing for sure. But in a letter she wrote from the same year, she said that she liked Hitler, but didn't approve of all the anti-Semitism stuff.
It's not really how she phrased it, if I remember right, but sure.
Which she blamed on Joseph Goebbels. Incredible. Well, obviously I don't approve of all of his extreme rhetoric on social issues, but I've got to defend my money against the communists, so yeah, I voted for Hitler. He's going to make Germany strong again. Hitler gave Elizabeth a whole bunch of money to manage the Nietzsche archives. Elizabeth dies of old age in 1935. Hitler came to her funeral, and that colony in Paraguay is still there. According to this New York Times article that I found from 2013, it is now a pretty normal, just normal town of about 6,000
Buildings are still there. Like the phrasing of this, so poorly written, everything's so poorly written, but I think this is where you get those moments where it's like, oh, this is how little they care about the words they're using. That colony in Paraguay is still there. That would be like saying, there was this town that massacred a whole bunch of Indians, and that town, they're all still there. We call it New York City now, and of course it's completely different than it was, and the buildings, some of them are still there, and it's not the same people at all, and of course it's a massive, but yeah, it's the same town. It's the same colony.
Still there. According to this New York Times article that I found from 2013, it is now a pretty normal, just normal town of about 6,000 Paraguayan people. Congratulations to the Aryan master race on that stunning achievement. I really don't think it's looking good for Friedrich Nietzsche. I mean, he was really racist.
Berlin's still there. This town of Nazis, the capital of the Nazis, is still there. Like, what?
He's really anti-Semitic.
The Nazi capital. Hitler's house, the Nazi, like, fuck, God.
He didn't like women. He
did not like women. It's more complex than that, but his takes on women are pretty fucking wild sometimes. I can give that, but it's not like, even for the time though, they were still progressive.
Democracy. He openly approved of eugenics.
He did not.
I'm loading the cancel gun. Could we mount a last-minute defense for woke Nietzsche?
Probably not, because it would require reading him, which you've never done, apparently.
Could we say, it was a different time,
No,
People
don't even have to do that.
Back then, they didn't.
Literally the quote you used, I just read the rest of the sentences, and it made it clear that you were just bullshit.
They didn't know racism was bad. Wokeness hadn't been invented yet. Wokeness, as we all know, was invented by the CIA in 2016 to prevent
sarcasm is a fantastic way to not make a point.
Sanders from becoming president. But here's the thing. Some people back then did know that racism was bad. They were called racial minorities, and they weren't listened to because...
No. White people also did not like racism. Did you know that, Abigail? There are abolitionists of all stripes who didn't like racism or slavery or castes of classes of people. In fact, there's some famous ones, you fucking moron.
Because of all the racism. Checkmate. I don't know.
Nietzsche has extensive writings that go against the concept of race as a biological class. And he considered it basically weak-minded. Racist, he considered to be weak-minded.
In all seriousness, though, I just don't think we do ourselves any favors by pretending that this stuff isn't in the text.
Because it's not, you fucking moron, and you liar.
But it's now time to open the...
See, it's just not in the text. The examples you give, then you say other shit that sounds worse. But remember, the examples given are explicitly not what was said, and in fact, the opposite of that. So when she says things like, he says that he's for eugenics, presume the same. There's no reason to not presume the same. Give her all of the room she's already given and earned. She's earned the fact that She lies, makes up quotes, removes things out of context, and then says shit that is unrelated to the thing entirely in order to completely poison the well. Period.
Envelope and find out the answer. Here we go.
So wait, is this whole video just resentment against people who read philosophy? No. I wish it was that. This is an identitarian and reactionary, actually, who simply wants to make a general point about shaming people who do things they find bad, so that way they can feel good about themselves. So close.
Oh man, oh jeez. It's gonna say he's not woke. It's gonna say not woke. I put so much more.
You're not woke.
Oh my god.
This is woke. This who cares? Ooh.
Surprise!
Like, just shit writing. Again, this is just embarrassing.
I'm not here to cancel Friedrich Nietzsche.
You couldn't, you fucking moron. Trust me.
He's been dead for, like, what, 120 years? He's already been cancelled by pneumonia. We can acknowledge all of the wild racist stuff
We don't have to, actually, because that doesn't really exist.
that he said, whilst still getting something out of the good bits.
The good bits. Name one good thing that he did. And I haven't watched this far because Sunday stopped, I stopped. I have a theory that she is going to try to compliment Nietzsche and also get it wrong in the greatest twist of all time. And it won't be intentional, but it will be funny.
I mean, clearly.
Case in point.
But the reason I framed things this way is there's this whole genre of
I hate being right. I want to be surprised by these people.
YouTube now that is dedicated to telling you whether things are woke or unwoke. I mean, like video games and
There is nothing more pathetic. There's nothing more pathetic than this. This is pathetic. This is pathetic. So you do a bait title and picture and thumbnail and a video about how Nietzsche is Nietzsche woke or not. And then your final point is, it's lame to be outraged or even have that conversation. I've just spent 25 minutes wasting your time because I don't value it because I'm a narcissist who doesn't read books or care about philosophy. Instead, I will make this, and I bet you, like every YouTube video, most people didn't watch until halfway and they went, holy fuck, he's a racist, and they're done. You're poisoning people. You're doing the opposite of philosophy. Garbage person. Just a fucking garbage. What garbage this is.
movies and oh my god. Star Wars, so many grown men are so angry about woke Star Wars.
It's because you're bringing this up because you were in it. Star Wars is a children's show. Grow up.
Especially since I was in it.
Yeah, that's not why. It's because Star Wars sucks now and has sucked for many, many years. Star Trek sucks now. Everything sucks now. Things suck now. No one cares that you're in it. Narcissist. God.
So much of the media cycle now is this like woke, anti-woke clash.
Oh, and I'm good for stepping outside of it by doing a half-hour video about Nietzsche being woke or anti-woke. Not contributing at all.
The philosopher Wendy Brown says that this woke versus anti-woke, like DEI moral panic, is a symptom of cultural nihilism. It's a sign that values are losing their value. Everything has become commercialized, even ethics, which is just reduced to branding, to content. So how do we fight this? I mean, something's gone wrong with society. We've gone off the rails. We're valuing the wrong things. How do we combat this cultural nihilism? Well, do you know who is actually fighting cultural nihilism?
Nietzsche?
The MAGA movement.
It's so gross. So let me just give a short version. She has a second video. We're not going to watch it because I'm not paying money to do that, and I don't care. Like, this is already torture enough. And she clearly doesn't understand Nietzsche. Nebula, which is a service that people pay in order to watch educational videos, sponsored this and that, and her for the most part. And that's behind a paywall on Nebula. Everyone here should let Nebula know. If you have a membership, cancel it immediately. Just cancel it. Nebula's trash. Because it doesn't matter what they get on the service. All they care is that they get more content that people will click on. They're playing a game. They're not an educational platform. They're shit. Fuck them. Period. Sorry if you work for Nebula, but you are Satan's little helpers, apparently. So grow up. The idea that MAGA isn't culturally nihilistic is fucking terrifying to me that she believes this. It is the epitome of cultural nihilism. It's the epitome of cultural nihilism. It's a cynical take on politics explicitly. It's nihilistic explicitly. Jesus Christ. You have to be incredibly stupid. Do you know, like, the good nihilism is Nietzsche. Nietzsche's the good nihilism. The me nihilism. There's a good nihilism. There's a positivist nihilism. It exists. It's good. Thank you, Insomniator, for $5. You ever see the scene in Scanners where the dude's head blew up? This is Lewis Black has a bit about how his theory why people have aneurysms and die is because one day they hear the stupidest thing that they've ever heard and they can't get out of their head, and eventually it kills them because they can't stop thinking about it. This is that. This is that. Secret Agent, and isn't capitalism at its root cultural nihilism? Yes, especially when MAGA, their number one department is the Department of Governmental Efficiency. That's nihilism. That's, what the fuck? Like, yes, that's the line. If it weren't for my horse, I wouldn't have spent that year in college. Or, you know who's really fighting cultural nihilism? MAGA. Just fucking right here, just the vein. Boop! And then I just fall over and die.
They're actually some of the only people who are even talking about it. So that's what we are going to talk about. PhilosophyTube is officially trash. Officially trash. That's it. This trash. This is the problem with popular philosophy. Mark Fisher. This is Mark Fisher turn. This is a Mark Fisher turn. And people, oh, why do you hate Mark Fisher now? I used to really support, I even liked Mark Fisher for a little bit early on. People would read Mark Fisher, Capitalist Realism, and then come away and they might read a Deleuze book or two and be like, anything that would get people into Deleuze. Thank God, thank you, and just join. But then I noticed, I got invited to join the Deleuze subreddit as a moderator because I like explaining things to people and having conversations with people because I am stupid. I'm a very stupid man who will in good faith have conversations with people who do not care for hours and hours and hours. And there are many, many examples of this in the last couple of years online. And what I learned is that people who start with Mark Fisher never get to Deleuze right. You just don't. Because Mark Fisher is writing about ideology. Deleuze ain't. It's actually a deeply anti-Deleuzian work. In fact, most of what the CCRU did, this is Nick Land to Mark Fisher to all of them, is deeply, deeply, deeply critical of Deleuze, but don't know they are because they didn't really read it that well in the first place. Because, as I like to say, are you shocked that British guys tended to find themselves as the center of the world and that they are always correct about everything? Leave it to white British people to find a way to be the most narcissistic fucks on the planet. Americans even have that, but it's usually with at least a tinge of like pretend humility.
British people don't even have that these days when they do this shit. So this is what happens. You get this fucking garbage where people just terribly just dump shit, and it's analogous to things that you understand, and so you jump into them. But they don't understand that they're not actually explaining the thing, and you can do this. I've got a couple of videos. I have a video that I'm finishing working on where I talk through how specifically despotic overcoding and cultural hegemony operates. Because most people believe it operates by taking over a culture, but it doesn't. What it does is it overcodes, it writes over the things that are happening. The example I'm using is a pop culture thing, Trolls World Tour. Sounds silly, but it's not an analogy, because in Trolls World Tour, they literally have it happen. And it's not explicit in the film, but you can see it happen. There are things in pop culture where you can do this. Zizek's actually very good at this. His entire book, Everything You Wanted About Lacan But Were Afraid to Ask Hitchcock, is probably one of the best books on Lacan for someone who's wanting to start down the path of Jacques Lacan, who is notoriously difficult, and I would never recommend reading Lacan directly, like as a start. It's very good because he understands the thing as it is that the thinker's trying to get across in the construction of it and the structuration, and then he finds not an analog to that. He finds that. That's it, because you don't have to find an analog to things. Analogs don't really exist. Analogs are misshapen nightmares of things. They're the Frankenstein's monster of philosophy. All of this shit that we just watched is analog. It's all bullshit. It has nothing to do with anything. It's garbage. Pop culture shit is garbage. Always is. But you can find the analog of the thing. For example, when I read that Nietzsche piece, when I said, hey, the literal thing we're watching her do is what he's saying you shouldn't do. That's not an analog. It's the thing. It's not hard to find. Philosophy is everywhere. Everywhere. This is horrifying. This is someone who's not only really never read Nietzsche, but I would be very hard pressed to believe they have any background in philosophy at all if this is how they read people. Because it's incredibly not just unforgiving, but it's reading it poorly, uncritically, without curiosity. That's depressing that this is PhilosophyTube. You get to trademark that shit. You get to own. Abigail Thorne owns PhilosophyTube. That's not a thing anyone else can use. It's not like BreadTube. It'd be like if someone started a channel called BreadTube and just owned it. AnarchyTube, Black Twitter as a Twitter account and then trademarked it. That's what she did. This is a reactionary who's deeply self-interested and only cares about that. And not someone who cares about philosophy. They got honors on their philosophy. Who cares? Who cares? I don't give a shit about how well they did. They don't read philosophy. Like, it's just clear they don't. She is not a person who's read Nietzsche. That's it. That's it. Or as he said, these glasses make you look way too Sam Hyde. Look, glasses make me look too Lennon. Okay? It's not my fault. Sam Hyde also likes Lennon's glasses. Not John. Not Lennon. Lenin. Yeah, it's not my fault. You know how horrified I was when he fucking started wearing these? I was like, you motherfucker. God damn it. I was like, you son of a bitch. I was so mad because I was like, it was the first thing. You're the first one because I know you fucking you watch Sam Hyde.